We've been told we have 5 senses, but science shows us we experience the world through far more, from balance to time to temperature and movement. And when design embraces this full spectrum, spaces begin to tell stories we can truly experience. Welcome to the HAUS podcast, your go-to space where design, cognitive science, well-being, and business come together. I'm your host, Monica Costa, and today you're tuning into a Neurodesign Capsule, an exploration into how the spaces we dwell in can engage our senses, shape our thoughts, and quietly guide our behavior. This podcast is powered by HAUS, an online mentorship launchpad for emerging designers who want to create spaces for well-being grounded in cognitive sciences principles. Let's dive in. I still remember how electrified I felt the day I discovered that we do not just have 5 senses. I mean, did you know that science, according to a research from the University of Glasgow, points to as many as 33 senses? Suddenly, for me, the world of design felt wider, richer, almost like someone had handed me a new set of lenses to see reality. And the thing is that out of those 33, around 10 can be directly shaped through design, which actually means there are far more ways to influence how we live and experience our spaces than what we were taught in school. And well, since it was a new discovery for me, I got obsessed with this idea, and without planning it, I started compiling everything I was learning into one document, layering evidence, examples, and applications until it became my own sensory playbook. A guide that showed me just how much possibility we overlook when we only design for the obvious 5 senses. In that file, I mapped out how senses like balance, temperature, proprioception, and even the perception of time can be woven into indoor spaces. It did turn into a very practical tool that I keep refining up to date. And actually, in case you're wondering, I do share it. Whenever I run a clarity session with a new designer who wants to learn a bit more about our mentorship program, I share it as a starting point because I see it as an invitation to begin working with these ideas right away. So if you ever want access to that and are looking for personalized guidance on your design journey for both your business and design process, you'll find the link in the show notes below. But before that, and for now, let's pause for a moment. Don't worry, I'll remind you about this free session by the end of the video. Now I want you to think, how many senses can you name off the top of your head? Hold that number. If you can, comment it down below. And now, the real question that drives this episode. What happens when we stop designing just for what's visible and start designing for everything that we can actually perceive? For too long, interior design has been treated as if it's only belonged to the eyes. Colors, shapes, light. That's where most conversations end, right? But the truth is, our brain never experiences a space visually alone. As I mentioned before, research from the University of Glasgow even suggests we have as many as 33 distinct senses shaping our perception of reality. And as I also referred to before, out of those, at least 10 can be directly influenced by design. That means we've only been working with a tiny part of the picture. Let's begin with the 5 senses everyone knows. Sight is, of course, the sense that usually dominates design. We choose palettes, arrange furniture, and sculpt light because we know first impressions are usually visual. But vision makes us aware of more than aesthetics. For example, exposure to daylight. It has been shown to boost mood, regulate circadian rhythms, and improve cognitive performance. So when we describe a space as bright, we can also understand it as a living biological experience, not just a simple visual metaphor. Now that's sight, and that's one thing. But if we talk, for example, about hearing, we'll talk about an often overlooked sense in interiors. However, acoustics can completely change how we feel in a room. And actually, you can watch our last Neurodesign episode, 018, where we delved into this topic very deeply. Studies actually show that constant noise raises stress hormones, while soft, balanced soundscapes lower anxiety and help us focus. Here, you gotta think of rugs absorbing echo, curtains softening harshness, or even water features creating a natural rhythm. It is not necessarily design that you can see, but it is something that you can sense. Just like smell. This was another that we used to underestimate. But because scent is sensed by the olfactory bulb, which connects directly to the amygdala in the hippocampus, which is the brain's emotion and memory centers, it is the only sense that has the power to instantly generate a reaction in us. Because it's not filtered by our brain to choose if we want to integrate it or not in the experience that we're having. And actually, it's been widely studied. A hint of lavender can slow your heart rate, while citrus, for example, can increase your alertness. That means that the invisible design of air is what often can give a space its emotional signature. Now let's talk about taste. I know it might seem far away from design, but it sneaks in through rituals. Think, for example, of a coffee nook in the living room or a space for tea away from the kitchen. They create atmosphere, an atmosphere based in flavor. And these little taste centered corners can also be designed to become important anchors of daily life. And then, of course, we have touch, which is the silent giant, hapticity. Think about it. Everyone can feel, but not everyone can see, which makes this sense more universal than sight itself. Even before we open our eyes as newborns, we begin to understand the world through contact. Skin against skin, warmth, texture. Touch is our first language for safety and connection. In design, hapticity means that surfaces, shapes, and materials speak directly to our nervous system. A cool stone floor in summer, the grain of wood beneath your hand, or even the weight of a door handle. All of these subtle cues anchor us in place. And actually, neuroscience shows that these tactile experiences light up reward pathways in the brain, releasing dopamine and oxytocin, making touch not only pleasurable, but also deeply emotional. Touch gives depth, memory, and intimacy to a space. It turns a room into an experience that we can actually and truly feel. By now, you may have noticed already that we do underestimate touch. So I actually invite you to start noticing touch more intentionally in your designs and also in your everyday environments. Pay attention to texture, the warmth or the coolness of materials, and even the visual textures. They suggest depth as well. So let's start paying attention to that. Now, this is only the beginning. Beyond these five, design also touches senses we rarely pause to consider. And today, I'm here to share a few of them with you. But there's more to this. So if you'd ever want to explore them all in depth, remember, I created a guide for designing for the more than five human senses. And actually, it's available to you as a gift, together with a free session with me, or for direct purchase if that feels easier for you. You get the links to everything in the description below. For now, let's step beyond the obvious. Let's talk first about proprioception. It is our sense of body, position, and movement. It's what allows us to walk across a room in the dark without bumping into a chair, or to know exactly where our hands are without looking at them. And in design, we can engage proprioception by encouraging natural movement, mainly by heightening our awareness of being in a space, not just passing through it. Think of furniture that supports more than one posture, pieces that let you perch, recline, or lounge, so your body naturally shifts instead of being locked into one single position. This is especially powerful in workplaces designed for people with ADHD, where movement isn't a distraction but a way to stay engaged for them. Other ways of engaging this sense is through interactive elements like sliding panels, pivoting doors, or movable partitions. Moments where you have to coordinate your movement with the space itself. And even varied ceiling heights can change your awareness, making you feel expansion in one area or compression in another. Another way of engaging proprioception is through curved corridors or angled walls, which can actually guide the user to adapt their body movements, not just to walk in a straight line. And then there's thermoception, our sense of temperature. It may not sound glamorous, but it's deeply tied to comfort. A fireplace glowing in the winter, radiant heated floors under bare feet, or even the choice of breathable fabrics in upholstery can transform the way a room feels. Warmth can make a space feel safe and nurturing, but excess heat or chill can feel hostile and even draining. Temperature literally shapes how welcomed or unwelcomed our bodies feel in a room. Now, another important sense for design is nociception, which is a sense of pain. And I know it might seem counterintuitive in a design context, but stay with me. It's actually critical. Poorly designed furniture that strains the body, sharp corners that bruise shins, or harsh or flickering lighting that causes headaches are all failures of nociceptive design. Now, from my perspective, this gives a whole other level of importance to ergonomics, choosing gentle materials, and softening transitions of light and shadow. Next up is Equilibrioception, which is our sense of balance. And no, it's not simply about not falling over. Balance is actually also psychological, and environments play a big role in shaping it. A room where furniture feels unevenly distributed or where light is much stronger on one side than the other, that can create a subtle unease. Even a crooked picture frame at the end of the hallway can trigger that discomfort. And there are plenty of other cues. Staircases without handrails that make you walk more cautiously, sloped ceilings that compress one side of a room, or floor patterns that visually tilt, throwing you off your sense of orientation. And actually, research in environmental psychology shows us that when spaces feel visually or physically unstable, our stress levels rise and we spend less time in them. But the opposite is also true. With thoughtful arrangement, balanced lighting, and clear circulation, design can restore a sense of stability, both physical and emotional. It's as if when a space feels steady, our nervous system does too. And finally, the last sense I'll touch here is Chronoception, which is our sense of time. This one fascinates me. We don't only perceive time through clocks, we feel it through environmental cues. So the way sunlight shifts across a wall, the rhythm of shadows lengthening on the floor, the changing temperature of a room as the day moves on, or even the background sounds of a neighborhood, birds at dawn, or distant traffic at dusk. All of these anchor us in the passage of time. Actually, it's been shown that when natural time cues are missing, like in windowless offices or hospitals with constant artificial lighting, our circadian rhythms can drift, leading to fatigue, stress, and reduced focus. But when we design with chronoception in mind, bringing in daylight, framing views of the outside, or creating lighting that follows natural rhythms, spaces feel dynamic, alive, attuned to the cycles of day and night. They remind us that we're part of a larger rhythm, and it allows us to be attuned with it as well. Now, these are just a handful of additional senses that we can design for. In fact, in the playbook I mentioned earlier, there are more, and each one is broken down in greater detail with practical ways to apply them. But even with just these 5 beyond the traditional, you can actually already see how design shifts from decorating what's visible to shaping the very way people inhabit a space. And tuning into these senses as a designer is far more powerful than it might seem at first. Let me explain. Up until now, we've been talking about designing for the senses to create comfort, harmony, and well-being, right? Well, but what if sometimes the goal isn't to soothe, but to disrupt or interrupt a specific pattern to nudge a specific behavior? Let's take equilibrioception, for example. Our sense of balance, remember. Most of the time, we want to stabilize it, but there are contexts where unease is the point. Think of those houses in the theme parks, built completely upside down to serve as an attraction. From the moment you step in, your brain is scrambling. Ceilings become the floor, furniture hangs above your head, and you feel slightly dizzy because your balance cues are at war with your expectations. This design is disorienting on purpose, and that's the whole idea of that experience. The same happens with proprioception. Museums and installations sometimes design narrow, tilted corridors or mirrored rooms where your body doesn't quite know where to go. The result is playful confusion. Suddenly, you're hyper aware of every movement you make. Yayoi Kusama's infinity rooms are a very good example of this, where reflections distort your sense of space until you lose track of where the floor ends and the walls begin. Now let's think about thermoception. In well-being architecture, we design for comfort, but sometimes spas and hammams intentionally push temperature to extremes. Cold plunge pools and then hot saunas to shock the system, alternating discomfort and release to intentionally trigger physiological benefits. Here, the wrong thermal design is exactly what creates the ritual. And even nociception, which remember is a sense of pain, gets toyed with in controlled ways sometimes. You see those hard benches in certain public spaces? They are designed for transience. They're subtly nudging you not to linger. And also, another example are galleries. Bright white lights that can be slightly uncomfortable are sometimes used to heighten the starkness of the art and keep you alert. And now, our last example here is chronoception, our perception of time. It can also be manipulated to nudge a specific expected behavior. Casinos are a classic case. No windows, constant artificial lighting, looping soundscapes, and even taste plays an important role here. They sometimes feed you, so you don't have to go out and find food elsewhere. The intention here is to make you lose track of time entirely, and most of the times they achieve it. However, on the flip side, some meditative spaces exaggerate slow lighting changes or long reverberant sounds to stretch your sense of duration, pulling you into stillness. So the nuance here is multisensory design can do way more than simply enhance well-being. It all depends on our intentions as designers. We can calm, we can energize, we can challenge, or even confuse depending on the experience we want to create. Discomfort, bending, or even breaking a sense in the right dose and context is what creates impact, storytelling, and experience in our designs. Now, here's your challenge of the week. I want you to walk through your own living room or any room you spend time in and audit it through the lens of the senses. Start with the obvious five: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. And then push yourself a little further. Can you notice how the room speaks to your balance, to your sense of temperature, to your sense of time? Maybe pick one of these lesser known senses, remember Thermoception, Equilibrioception, or Proprioception, and make a small adjustment. It could be adding a throw blanket that retains warmth, or rearranging furniture to create a more natural flow. Or why not adjusting your lighting to reflect the rhythms of the day? The goal is to begin experimenting with how even subtle tweaks can shift the way you experience your space. Remember this: design is never just visual. Our bodies are constantly reading spaces through dozens of sensory channels at the same time, whether we are aware of it or not. So when we design with only sight in mind, we're missing a lot of opportunities to truly transform how people experience a space. I'd love to hear from you. Which of these hidden senses surprised you the most or felt more inspiring? Leave it in the comments and let's start a conversation. If this episode resonated, go ahead and share it with someone who might need a soft entry point to this conversation. And if you'd like to dive deeper, you'll find the link to our Designing for the More Than 5 Human Senses guide right below in the description. Remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss any new episode drop every Tuesday. And as always, stay well, stay curious, and keep designing your life with intention. See you next time.